Hello, everybody. This is Cody Bateman. Welcome to a brand new version of our Relationship Marketing Podcast. Super excited about our guest who's on today. You've already heard an introduction of him, and we're going to jump in with him in just a second. But I just want to, first of all, just reach out to all of our listeners. Thank you for listening in, sharpening your saws, learning new techniques, learning what relationship marketing is all about and how it helps you in your business. Sharing this with other people, a lot of word of mouth out there. So the listenership is growing pretty rapidly. And so thanks to all of you. And we're all in this together. And what I've found is a lot of our best guests are also consistent listeners on this podcast. And so you never know, I might be giving you a phone call one of these days. And, I don't have any particular, a lot of times podcasters, they want these big resumes of their guests and somebody that's been there, done that whole thing. And we have a lot of big level influencers that are on this show. I like to feature people from all different walks of life and all different levels of business. So you never know, you might get a phone call from me one day saying, we want to bring you on here because you're implementing relationship marketing principles. So anyway, thank you to all of you. So let's jump right in. We actually have one of the big influencers on our show today. This is Mr. Craig Case. Craig, how you doing, my friend?
Good, Cody.
So Craig and I go way back. Like, how long have we known each other, Craig?
Cody, it's been as long as you and I, either one of us have been in business. I mean, it's got to be 30 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I've always just, the best way to introduce Craig, you've already heard kind of his resume and some of the places he worked at and whatnot, but the best way for me to introduce Craig is he's one of those super smart guy entrepreneurs. Like there's entrepreneurs that just kind of wing it. Craig is a smart guy entrepreneur. There's some real brilliance in his brain, and you're going to see that today. And Craig, you have really blessed my life over the years because you bring incredible ideas to the table and you think very deeply about those ideas. And you've helped me with strategic plans over the years. We've spoken together on stages. We've done leadership retreats together. It's just an honor to be in the same room with you, my friend. So I really appreciate you being on the show. The main thing I want to talk about, and for those that watch it on YouTube, this book, Big Ideas, wow. Like, my goodness. I think, Craig, you took that accumulation of 30 years and really wrapped it up in this book. So Craig is the co-author of a book titled Big Ideas. The foreword was written by Stephen M.R. Covey. And my goodness, I actually read this book and I called you after I read it. Do you remember what I said to you? What did I say to you after I read the book?
Yeah, you said you knocked it out of the park. I'm going to recommend this to everybody as one of my top personal development books. I was thrilled.
Yeah, I actually, I put this book in my top 10. I mean, this is a top 10 book. It really is. And that's saying a lot from my library because I've got thousands of books like this. This is a top 10 book, and hopefully today we can feature some of the reasons why. So I want to jump right in, Craig, if we can. The subtitle, How to Unleash Your Creative Self and Have More Aha Moments. So this book, for our listeners, this is a lot about, on this podcast, we talk a lot about building relationship with self, building relationship with others in your personal life, and building relationship with people in your business. And we learn over time that all three of those types of relationships kind of mesh together. Today, we're going to be more in the realm of relationship with self. So this is some personal development in here that's absolutely incredible. So, Craig, I've got a whole bunch, again, for those on YouTube, I don't know if you can see that or not, but almost every page is underlined with notes in it that I have from this book. it's just incredible stuff. I want to kind of get into some of that. First of all, just right off the top, give us the basic concept of big ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting. As I had a couple of friends who were interested in inspiration. The not the I mean the spiritual elements, but what happens when you are just filled with awe and where you have insights that come to you. And they asked if we could, myself and an associate could write, put a workshop and write a book on this. And as we started to study, I realized, I came to understand that all aha moments, all creativity, as we looked at people who have had world-changing ideas that have really illuminated and changed the world, they were all problem-based. If you really go back, people have insights, and they change the world simply because they have a problem they're trying to fix. And the bigger the problem, the more likelihood that they're going to have an insight that is world-changing. And so as we studied this, we saw patterns, whether it was Archimedes or whether it was Johannes Gutenberg or whether it was Einstein. There were patterns in how they went about changing their ideas and their thinking and where those aha moments came from. And so the book is really, what is that pattern? What do you do that creates more aha moments? And when we talk about aha moments, we're really talking about world-changing ideas. What happens in the brain when those take place, and what were the people doing beforehand that made those ideas show up and manifest themselves? It was really fascinating research, and so the book is really all about that.
What I love about the book is you really get into the concept of how the brain works and the ideal places your brain needs to be to have aha moments. And it's really good. In fact, there's two primary areas that I'd like to speak on. The first one is you kind of tee it up where you talk about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind, and what the differences are between those. That's the first part of it. Then the other part of it is the brain wave stuff. Now, if you're listening right now, you're going, wow, this is getting deep. Well, it's kind of deep, but the way you do it is so incredible because it makes you realize that if you understand what's in this book, you can create a lot better habits in your life as far as getting your mind to be in the right place where you have super creative ideas. And so talk to us first of all about the first part, conscious, subconscious, and unconscious.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's really where it lies. Most of the time, we try and fix things with our conscious brain. We've got this problem we have identified, and we look for solutions consciously, and creativity really isn't a conscious activity. It's an unconscious activity. Freud says that 90% of what your mind does and what your brain does is in this unconscious realm. And the interesting thing is we can't access the unconscious directly. Neuroscientists, they don't know where it exists in the brain. They don't know how to get there. They know that there are things they can do to get the information out of the unconscious. And I'll talk about that. But primarily, that's where creativity takes place. And so there are certain things that need to be done to allow the unconscious brain to deliver its wisdom. That's where wisdom lies. That's where, if there's an interaction between the divine and you, it takes place in the unconscious brain or the unconscious mind. And so we want to access that more often. Most of the...
I'm going to go straight to your book here, page 23 and 24, these three minds, conscious, subconscious, unconscious. So here it is. And if you turn the page, you have a visual. So there's a visual on page 24, and most of us seen this before. I don't know if people will see this on YouTube or not. It's that visual, and most of you probably seen it, where it's an iceberg, and you see the iceberg above the water, and you see the iceberg below the water. And 90% of that iceberg is under the water. You don't even see it. And 10% of the iceberg is above the water. So why is that picture in there? Explain that.
Well, this is Freud who really had this discovery. You know, the conscious mind is what's going on right now. It's your thinking. It's your self-talk. The subconscious is that activity that you can access when you need to. You can control your breathing when you want to, consciously. You know what 6 times 5 is consciously, but it wasn't there in your conscious mind. The unconscious, that's where 90% of all the of your brain works. It takes place right there. It's really interesting. In fact, we talk about it. 2 Harvard scientists, they said that the brain produces or accesses billions of bits of data every second, but very few of those, 0.0005%, makes it to our conscious mind. Where does the rest of that information go that's coming into your senses and into your brain? It goes in the unconscious. And so as one of the keys we learned, Cody, in writing the book is the clearer that you can get on what you're trying to know, what that does is that tells the unconscious what it's supposed to be paying attention to. And it will pay attention to whatever it is you want it to pay attention to. In the brain, there's an area called the reticular activating system, and it funnels information to different parts of the brain and the mind. And as you write, and one of the things we really encourage people to do is when they're dealing with a tough issue, take a pen and a piece of paper and write about it. As you write about it, you program the brain as to what it's supposed to pay attention to. And it says, okay, I'll start gathering that information. All sorts of information is constantly coming into your senses and into your brain and your mind, but most of it just gets discarded. If you tell the brain what to pay attention to, it'll start to gather it, it'll work on it, and then it will deliver answers to you in one of 3 ways. The brain delivers information, the unconscious delivers information through dreams. It's really important to pay attention to your dreams because there's all sorts of wisdom showing up in your dreams. Through writing, if you'll write, particularly when you're dealing with a hard issue, you will have insights that you didn't have before you wrote. That's why journaling is not only so healthy, but it's so critical. It's one of the ways the unconscious mind can deliver information. And third is through aha moments. And they come often, but most of the time when they show up, we don't pay attention to them. We have these ideas where we're driving down the street. We've been working on some issue, whether it's a personal issue or a business issue. We get some insight, but then if you don't pay attention to that insight, it will come and go. And when you get to work, when you get to a place where you can act on it, it's already gone. So,
so in my line of work and in my philosophies, I talk about the word promptings. And in fact, I have a book titled Promptings, and you know what promptings are. You know, it's I explain the elementary explanation is it's a thought that comes into your mind, typically to reach out to other people, hopefully in kindness or something to that effect. And my whole philosophy about relationship marketing is based on that. It's based on when someone buys a product from you and you really do feel an emotion of appreciation, well, thank them and genuinely thank them. And that is a prompting. Or, you know, you listen to a great speech one day and it makes a difference in your life. Thank the person that gave the speech. That's a prompting. Is that the same thing? I mean, is that the same?
It's exactly the same thing. In fact, the book Big Ideas is kind of a companionship book to your book on promptings and your philosophy. Promptings are, they come to you because there's something you're supposed to do. But most of the time, if we don't pay attention to those, the idea comes and goes and nothing happens. Okay. In fact, as I wrote this book, I kept thinking of the philosophy that you encourage people to act on, simply because it's the action that really makes the difference. And when these ideas show up, these promptings, these aha moments, physical things happen in the brain, but more importantly, they don't show up for no reason. And if you want a richer experience in your life, if you want to have, and this is exactly what you teach, you pay attention to when those things show up and you act on them. That's one of the blessings of your product, is it allows people to act quickly when ideas manifest themselves.
So I think I just made a connection that I've never made before when I was listening to you talk. I want you to speak on this, see if I'm thinking the right way. So you mentioned that a great way to tap the unconscious is to write things down. Physically write things down, which will put things into the unconscious mind, and then at the proper time, the unconscious will deliver that to your conscious. Is that a good recap?
Yeah. When you write, when you write, you're telling the brain and the unconscious what to pay attention to.
Okay.
And then as you write, the unconscious will often deliver solutions in the very act of writing.
Okay, so I want to tie that to the promptings idea, because one of the things that we teach, and this is at a more elementary level of things, but one of the things that we teach is that if you act on your promptings by reaching out to somebody in writing, because we use greeting cards and you write a message. So if you act on promptings every single day and write down that sense of appreciation or something about that prompting to a person, saying thank you, I appreciate you, whatever, and every day you make it a habit that you're writing those things down, is it possible that that activity is feeding my unconscious and therefore delivering things when they need to be delivered? One of the things I always say is when you act on your promptings, you'll receive more of them.
That's exactly what's going on. See, that roadway between the unconscious and the conscious mind is not a clear path. And the more you pay attention to aha moments, to promptings, and you act upon them, you're enhancing the unconscious brain's ability to get information to the conscious where action takes place. And absolutely, they go hand in hand.
Wow.
Yeah, you're right.
Incredible. Okay, so one other part of the book, I think, let's see if I can find it here, that where you talk about the wave length, delta, theta, alpha, and beta.
Yeah.
Well, this my good friend Craig, man, he always gets deep enough to where it just really gets you. I got so much out of this. Delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. So then the main ones are theta, alpha, beta, gamma. What am I talking about? Can you explain that to us?
When you
all of our listeners, man, stop if you're driving, pay attention to your driving, but please, man, really focus on what Craig teaches you about these words. Because I'm telling you, I think that there's ways, when you understand this, you'll create better habits. Let's put it that way. So go ahead.
This is really interesting on relationships, and make sure I bring this back, because what I'm studying right now and getting ready to put into a book is completely aligned with what you're talking about on relationship marketing. But the brain has evolved to operate slow and fast, okay? And it has different levels of slow and fast, but the brain generally transitions from a slow speed to a fast speed about every 90 minutes or so. That's how it works. But we have conditioned our brains to work in the beta state, which is a very fast state. Cody, you and I are in beta right now. You are in beta most of the time when you're at work. When you're going from one meeting to the next, you're figuring things out, you're dealing with problems. you're interacting with other people. That's beta stuff, okay? And the brain uses a lot of fuel. About 70% of your oxygen that you take into your body goes to your brain when you're in beta. About 25% of the blood that's in your body is feeding your brain. It's an energy hog, but it requires that because beta is where things get done. But this isn't where thinking takes place, okay? In order for your brain to slow down and make new connections, and those new connections are called learning or creativity. Creativity is when you have a novel idea and a useful idea that comes together at the same time, all right? That's an alpha state. It doesn't take place in beta, it takes place in alpha. And alpha is a daydreaming state. It's a slower state, but we don't know how to get to alpha very often. We tend to stay in this fast beta state that wears our brain out. Cody, how often have you gone home from work at the end of a day, you didn't do anything physical, but you were exhausted? Has that ever happened?
Oh my gosh, all the time, all the time.
And we keep ourselves in that beta state. Whenever we're on a screen, the screen is interrupting our natural flow of the brain's thinking. And it's interesting, there are 2 times people will tell me when they get great ideas. When they're driving down the street, when they're not thinking about anything, that's when these promptings show up. Or when they're in the shower and they're just kind of letting that water flow. Their brains are going at that slower state. The slower state, Cody, is when ideas manifest themselves. That's when the unconscious says, okay, Cody's in a slower brain state now. I can deliver information to him.
Wow.
And the problem is, in North America in particular, we've habitualized beta. We wake up, we grab our cell phones, and we look at the new information that's there. We go to beta, we stay in beta, we drive to work, we're listening to the news, we go to work, we're in meetings all day long, we come home, we watch the news, and we watch TV. The brain stays in this fast beta state, and it says, I can't take the new information that I'm getting and give you better ideas as a result, okay? So what we've learned is every couple of hours, you've got to consciously slow your brain down. You know, shut the door, no meetings, close your eyes, and for about 10 minutes, just let your brain stop.
So meditation's a good.
Meditation is a perfect mindfulness. I mean, if your listeners will go Google mindfulness or meditation or alpha waves and really study what they are, when the brain is operating at that slower speed, that's when it can take the new information and connect it to the old information and come up with better ideas. It can't do that in beta.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Here's one of the things that I've found. Man, we live in this social media world now. We've got our social devices. We have our smartphones. And I'll tell you what, for those who are not on YouTube, I'm holding up my smartphone right now. This is the greatest blessing in the world, and it's the greatest tragedy in the world all at the same time. Because I see it in my own life. I see it in the relationship with my wife and I, certainly a relationship with our kids, people that are closest to you. This device has changed everything about how we interact. It's
why you have to write a book on relationship marketing.
That's right. That's right.
That's exactly what's going on. Is the phone, for all of its benefits, it's designed to interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. It's designed to grab your attention. And I mean, there are 2 issues that are going on here. Loneliness is an epidemic. The Surgeon General has said it's the #1 health problem in America right now. Anxiety, if you're a millennial or younger, you probably suffer from acute anxiety. Those loneliness, anxiety, our inability to connect with people all come from what we've learned to do with social media. I mean, the phone's getting in the way. We think by sending a text that we're enhancing relationships. I mean, relationships are enhanced when people sit down face to face, or when people have an exchange of emotion. I mean, we hope that emojis will do that, but they're a cheap substitute for the real deal.
So there's that part of it, and I know there's millennials listening right now, or younger, saying, "No, we're a bunch of old farts. We don't know what we're talking about right now." But because it seems like people live, younger people really kind of do everything on devices, and
we all do.
we all do. But I think the younger you are, the more
you're inclined to.
The challenge I see, and it goes back to the whole theta, beta, it's beta and alpha. What you're saying is we need to allow our natural, you got to allow your brain to flow back and forth. So beta is great as long as you flow back into alpha.
Here's the other problem.
This phone keeps me in beta.
It keeps you in beta. The TV keeps you in beta. You need to get away from screens and take a walk around the block. You need to consciously do things that slow the brain down. Here's the reason. Here's the physiological reason. The brain operates off electrical impulses and chemicals. After 2 hours of high beta, the chemicals that create the positive and negative charges in the brain are depleted. It's sodium and potassium. 2 hours of high beta, you can't think well anymore. And when you look at the screen, when you go from one meeting to the next, your brain says, I can't do what you want me to do. And so I'm going to respond to you by making two things happen. I'll make you tired and I'll make you anxious. That's my response back to you. Okay. Right. If you'll let me go to alpha, in 10 minutes, I can recharge the potassium and sodium, and I'll make you feel better, and I'll make you think more effectively. That's why it's so important. It's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time to shut the door and close your eyes and listen to some soft music. In North America, we think it is, but it's not. It's actually doing it makes your work time far more effective. That's why it's really important to do that. And then let me just put in here also about sleep. And I only briefly talked about this in the book, but the brain transitions back and forth every 90 minutes when you're asleep, from delta, which is a very, very slow speed, to theta, which is a faster speed. It's slower than alpha, but the theta is when you're dreaming. Okay. And the important thing about when you're dreaming is that's when the brain is making all sorts of new connections. That's when creativity is at its peak. The interesting thing is most of the theta time, that dream time, takes place in the second half of the night. It doesn't take place in the first half. In the first half, when we're in delta, the brain is snipping out the old useless neurons, and it's cleaning itself. It's getting rid of the poisons. Once it's cleaned and once it's ready to go, then it can make new connections. And those new connections are vital. And that's why paying attention to dreams is so important, because the brain is actually delivering wisdom to you if you'll capture it. So getting enough sleep is really, really important.
That's where I was going to go. And I remember this in your book, and I thought it was really, really good. So if you're surviving on 5 hours of sleep a night, what's happening? Take the conversation you just gave us. If you're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, what
you're not getting any REM sleep.
No REM sleep, right?
You're not getting the most important sleep. Here's the interesting thing. They took a bunch of rats. They had about 50 rats, and they ran them through these mazes. The rats knew the maze really well. And then they took half of them and watched them all night. And every time they went to a REM sleep, they'd wake the rat up. In the next morning, when they took the REM sleeping rats, they knew how to run the maze. The rats that didn't get their REM sleep, they had no idea what to do. Their brain had forgotten and lost all the information. It hadn't been able to connect that day's learning in long-term memory. When you don't get enough sleep the second half of the night, you can't think well, and you don't remember, you don't learn information that overlaps old information so that you can be more creative and so that you can problem solve more effectively. Creativity is all about problem solving. Whether it's a work problem, whether it's a personal problem, you need better solutions. And the book and what we're talking about is, how do I get better solutions to my problems?
Yeah, it's really good. So, and again, for those, I know we're throwing a lot of things out here. What's cool about your book is you very simply pointed out, you know, you've got the different phases. So delta's the slowest, and then it goes to theta, and then to alpha, and then to beta, and then to gamma. So as each one, it just increases the brain waves as each goes on. So the slowest is theta, which is taking place.
Delta.
Or excuse me, delta, which is taking place in your sleep. And it's critical. It's absolutely critical that you get there.
Yep.
So, and then theta is kind of in between. And then alpha is meditation type of places, slow your brain down while you're still conscious. And then beta is kind of our daily, you know, we're at the grind.
You're in beta most of the time.
In beta most of the time. So how should you try to get to sleep?
Well, let me tell you, thank you. Let me just say gamma. Gamma shows up in the brain when you have aha moments, when you have promptings. If I had an EEG helmet on you, Cody, and you had a prompting or an idea, you would have gamma waves. And it's very interesting. Gamma waves are short, they encompass the whole brain, and they tend to be right about 3 times more than incremental thinking. We love gamma waves because, and people who have a lot of gamma waves, they're more compassionate, they're happier, they're kinder, and they tend to have more creativity than people who don't have gamma. Okay.
So gamma is the fastest.
Yeah.
So that's actually faster than beta. Beta is our
Yep.
daily conscious, go get it done kind of stuff. We have these tiny moments of
We call them gamma spikes.
Gamma spikes, these tiny moments of high inspiration prompting. Boom, it hits.
Boom. Yep.
So which mindset does gamma come from most? Does it come when you're in beta or when you're in alpha, or where?
Gamma never comes in beta.
Interesting.
It's always the precursor brain wave to gamma is alpha.
Okay, so the point is you got to slow your brain down to speed your brain up.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to relationships, people, here's an interesting thing. People who are in a beta state tend not to be other focused. Okay?
Right.
When they're in alpha, they tend to be very open and aware of other people's needs. That's why getting to alpha is so important when we're talking about the quality of a relationship, because that's where you become other people aware when you're in alpha, and you're not when you're in beta.
What's interesting is I sit and listen to this. I think about my dad. My dad, you know, he passed away a few years ago, and I was very close with my dad, and he passed away when
Your dad was a good guy.
Yeah, you knew my dad.
And he loved you.
Yeah,
a couple of times we had discussions.
Such a great guy, and he passed when he was like 83 years old, so he wasn't super old, but he was very, very, very active up until the day he died. But one of the things I noticed about my dad, and I noticed about grandparents and stuff as well, but one of the things I noticed about my dad is as he got older, he slowed down a lot. He took time. Like he sat with people and he took time and he looked you in the eye and he would tell you just very, very wise things. It's like his brain slowed down enough to where he could really focus on you.
Isn't that insightful?
Isn't that interesting? Because now, you know, because you look at a grandparent figure and it's like they're full of wisdom, they're full of kindness, they're full of love. Why do you think that is?
They don't have the anxiety that that we have in our business world. It's because they've slowed down.
They've slowed down. So in other words, they get into alpha way more.
Yeah, yeah.
We get into alpha way more, and it allows, we all have it in us. We just got to get to alpha way more.
Yeah, it's a choice you have to make, but you can't make the choice unless you become aware of why. And the book makes a pretty good case for it.
No question. Well, now hopefully you have some insight, listeners. Hopefully you have some insight as to why this is such a great book. And we're just touching the surface. I mean, we talked about the core, but God, there's so much that comes off of that core that you express. It's just amazing. This is one of those, you're not going to read it once, you're going to read it several times. And I think you're doing some courses around this. How does that work?
Yeah, we're doing some courses, and that's something I want to talk to you about. This would be a great course to bring to your people. But I'm with a company right now called Ampelis, Ampelis. They've bought my curriculum, and they're really into, this is what they've discovered. They're into meaning, and they're saying the main reason that people don't have close relationships and the main reason they're lonely is because they don't have meaningful lives. And meaning really drives purpose. And as we become more meaningful in our lives, we become more aware of other people, and we do the things that enhance the quality of relationships. It's pretty interesting stuff. But my book, and thank you for asking, Cody, is available on Amazon in 3 formats: printed, Audible, and Kindle. And this is information that really is available to anyone. Anybody can contact me directly. I can give you it's Big Ideas Training is where we have a website, and it's bigideastraining.com. Bigideastraining.com.
Okay.
And so you can access the book. You can access me on bigideastraining.com, and this is something that we're bringing to the world right now. And it's good stuff. Thank you.
One of the things I love about you, Craig, is that you are your information. You are always information and education first, and promotion last. I love that about you, because there's so many people out there today. Their focus is to be an influencer, so their whole focus is backwards, in my opinion, to where everything's about promotion. Look at me, I'm so great, blah, 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 blah. Go here, do this, do that. You know, I'm at the center of everything that's great in the world. And so that's promotion, promotion, promotion. You have always been education first. Like you show up and you just want to learn, and you want to educate people with the knowledge that you have, and then kind of allow the promotion to take care of itself. And it's one thing I really love about you. And my goodness, your content is just phenomenal. And we're looking forward. We're going to do some workshops with you here in the near future. But I highly, highly, obviously recommend the book, Big Ideas. Make sure you get a copy of this and read it. This is going to be this is a top 10 personal development in your library. It is in mine, I know. So here's how I like to close every one of these podcasts. You know, I've basically guided this by asking you questions, and we've interacted. So I always like to close by giving you the floor. No more questions, no more nothing. This is your chance to share whatever you want with this audience. So take the last few minutes and recap with that. Go ahead.
Cody, thank you. You know, I just want to respond with I've learned a tremendous amount about how to do business from you and from watching really what you do. You know, the whole idea of promptings almost drove this way back when I thought, you know, what's going on that creates that? And, you know, I've learned in my business that relationships really are the things that matter. I mean, everything else is secondary. One of the interesting studies that I didn't put in the book, but I really love is is a study that took place in Princeton in 2000 or 1972, where a couple professors, they brought people together who were getting ready to graduate being full-time pastors, and they asked them to prepare a lesson on the Good Samaritan. And as they went out and prepared this lesson, they were put in a situation where they had a chance to actually help somebody who was ill on the street. And the people who were rushed, only 10% helped them, where the people who weren't rushed, about 70% helped them. And the results of the study, they kind of came back and they said, you know, when people are rushed in life, they aren't aware of other people's needs. And when they slow down, they become aware. And when they become aware, they have the ability to make a difference. And really what you talk about and what I talk about to some degree, the second half of the book is all about how do you do the inspiration that you get. And that's where the harder work is, but acting on the ideas that you get when they show up, they don't show up by mistake.
That's right.
And that you don't even know most of the time the good that happens as a result of acting on an idea or an impression. And I've learned that from you, Cody. I appreciate being part of this and appreciate being able to share this message with your people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. There you have it, my friends. Craig Case, the co-author of the book, Big Ideas. Make sure you get your copy of it and go to his website. Once again, the website
is bigideastraining.com
Big
or
Ideas.
Ampelis, AMPELIS.org.
So make sure you do a little bit of research and go check that kind of stuff up. But if nothing else, make sure you get a copy of the book, either the audio or the actual copy of the book. So Craig, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. I know you're very, very busy, and appreciate the time you've spent. And for all of you listening, appreciate you being on with us today and look forward to another episode. We're going to keep gearing these things up. They're a lot of fun to do. I learned so much from doing the podcast. A lot of times I forget that I'm actually interviewing. I get so caught up in what our guests are saying. Like today, Craig, I was so impressed and caught up in what you're saying. I kind of forget I gotta ask another question, you know. So anyway, appreciate you very much, and we'll see you all on another episode. Take care, everybody.
If you have enjoyed this episode of the Relationship Marketing Podcast with Cody B, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review so that together we can get this message, The Power of Human Connection, out to the world. You can find Cody's new book, The Power of Human Connection, on Amazon or the Send Out Cards gift store.